I never thought a few words from my brother would change everything. Never stop enjoying life. Don't let anyone cage you. It sounded like harmless advice, the kind you'd hear over drinks, laughing at the absurdity of settling down too soon. But those words stuck, echoing in moments I didn't expect, especially when my life started feeling too predictable. I wasn't unhappy. My relationship was stable, my routine familiar. But somewhere along the way I stopped feeling excited. Love turned into habit, passion into duty. My partner was good to me, kind, consistent. Maybe that was the problem. Too much certainty, not enough fire. Then there was her. Or maybe him, depending on how you look at it. A new coworker, an old friend, a stranger at a coffee shop. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the way they made me feel. The way they looked at me like I was interesting, like I was alive. Started small. A lingering glance, a casual joke. An inside moment only we shared. I told myself it was nothing. People flirt. Doesn't mean anything. But then I started waiting for those moments, craving them. I checked my phone more often, hoping for a message that wasn't from my partner. I found myself dressing differently, caring more about how I looked on days I knew I'd see them. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. Thoughts weren't actions. But deep down I knew better. I knew what I was doing when I held eye contact too long, when I let their hand brush against mine and didn't pull away. I knew it when I laughed a little harder at their jokes, leaned in just a little closer. And then one night I heard my brother's words again. Why stop? Why deny yourself? Life is too short. I had always admired his freedom, the way he moved through life without guilt, without hesitation. Maybe he was right. Maybe the problem wasn't that I was tempted. Maybe the problem was that I had been denying myself for too long. That night, I didn't say no when they asked if I wanted to stay for another drink. I didn't look at my phone to check the time. I didn't think about the promises I had made. I just let it happen. The first time it happened, I told myself it was a mistake. A lapse in judgment. I woke up with the weight of it pressing down on my chest, but as the day went on, the guilt faded. Not completely, but enough to rationalize it. It didn't mean anything. It wasn't planned. Just happened. But then it happened again. And again. First it was thrilling. The stolen moments, the whispered conversations, the rush of secrecy. I told myself it was under control. That I could stop any time I wanted. That it was just a phase, something I needed to get out of my system. I started living two lives. One where I was the same person I had always been. Reliable, committed, predictable. The other reckless and selfish. And somehow, I convinced myself I could balance both. I became a master at deception. Quick explanations, carefully worded texts, deleting messages before they could be seen. I learned to hide my tracks so well that sometimes, I almost believed my own lies. But something changed. The guilt that had once been fleeting started settling in, becoming part of me. The excitement was still there, but it was tainted now, mixed with something heavier. Every touch, every glance, every moment spent in secret, it all carried the weight of knowing I was betraying someone who trusted me. My partner started noticing. The little things at first. The way I avoided eye contact when they asked how my day was. The way I pulled away from their touch just a second too soon. The way my excuses didn't quite line up the way they used to. You seem different lately. I laughed it off. Blamed stress, work, exhaustion. Anything but the truth. And for a while they believed me. 'Cause they wanted to. Because the alternative, the idea that the person they loved was lying to them, was too painful to consider. But I saw the doubt growing in their eyes. I felt the shift in the way they looked at me, like they were searching for something they couldn't quite put into words. And yet I didn't stop. Maybe because I didn't know how. Maybe because part of me didn't want to. Maybe because I had already gone too far, and turning back would mean facing everything I had done. So I kept going even as the lies piled up. Even as the weight of it all became unbearable. Even as I started to realize that no matter how careful I was, no secret stayed hidden forever. I thought I had control over everything. I thought as long as I was careful, as long as I covered my tracks, I could keep both worlds from colliding. But secrets have a way of unraveling, no matter how tightly you try to hold them together. The first crack appeared in the form of a missed call. My partner saw the name, a name that shouldn't have been on my screen at that hour. I brushed it off, wrong number, work-related, nothing important. They didn't push, but I could tell they didn't believe me. After that, the suspicion only grew. They started watching me more closely, asking more questions. Not in an obvious way, but in the way someone does when they already know the answer but are waiting for you to admit it. Became more paranoid. I double-checked my phone, made sure there were no traces left behind. But it was never enough. I could feel it slipping, the walls closing in. And then, the moment I had been dreading. The confrontation. Tell me the truth. I hesitated, but that second of silence was all they needed. They already knew. Maybe they had known for a while but were waiting for me to confess, to come clean on my own. But I didn't. I lied again. One last desperate attempt to hold on to the life I was destroying. You're being paranoid. But the damage was done. The doubt had turned into certainty. The way they looked at me, hurt, betrayed, like they didn't recognize the person standing in front of them, was worse than any anger they could have shown. I should have admitted it right then. Should have stopped pretending. But I didn't. Instead, I watched as the person who once trusted me completely took a step back, realizing I was no longer someone they could believe in. I had spent so much time fearing the moment everything would fall apart, but when it finally did, it didn't happen with a dramatic explosion. It happened in silence, in the space between words that could never be taken back. And for the first time, the weight of what I had done wasn't just mine to carry. It was theirs too. There was no screaming, no dramatic exit, just a quiet distance that settled between us like an unspoken truth. My partner didn't ask any more questions. They didn't have to. The way they moved around me, careful and measured, told me everything. They were already grieving what we had before it was officially over. I kept waiting for the explosion, for the fight that would make it easier to walk away. But it never came. Instead, there was just emptiness, a silence that was somehow worse than any argument. The person I had risked everything for started feeling different too. The excitement that once consumed me faded into something hollow. The stolen moments, the secret meetings, they didn't feel like victories anymore. They felt like reminders of everything I had lost. And then, almost as quickly as it started, it ended. No grand breakup, no final goodbye. Just a shift. They pulled away first, sensing that whatever thrill we had was gone. I had never really been theirs, just like they had never really been mine. We were both chasing something temporary, something that was never meant to last. I was left with nothing but regret. Not just for what I had done, but for the way I had let it consume me. I had told myself it was about freedom, about chasing happiness. But in the end, all I had done was destroy something real for something that was never meant to stay. My brother's words echoed in my mind. Never stop enjoying life. Don't let anyone cage you. I had followed his advice, convinced that I was choosing happiness. But what he never warned me about was the cost. He never told me that some things, once broken, can never be put back together. I had wanted more, but in the end I was left with less than I ever imagined.